Hi, everyone. Welcome to Internal Control Talks. Our goal with this podcast is to help you thrive as internal control professionals by bringing you the best advice from industry leaders. Today, we will talk about effectively communicate the importance of internal controls with Marcel Scholte. Marcel has 30 years of experience in the world of risks, controls, and audit, and held a variety of roles in the GRC field. From senior external audit manager at E&Y to senior internal audit roles for multinational companies, from head of SOX for US listed companies to owner of the internal control consultancy company InControl. Marcel, thank you for accepting my invite and join the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and what I've learned over the years to help others become better at this job, to learn from mistakes which I've made so that they don't make those mistakes themselves, but also to learn from examples which you can use in your practice and in your work. To get better, to get others convinced that internal control is important, which we all believe is important. So yeah, thank you very much, Cecilia, for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you, Marcel. Really looking forward to today's episode. A few months ago, I ran a survey on the top challenges of internal control professionals within my professional network around the globe on LinkedIn. Two of the top challenges reported were a lack of understanding of the importance of internal controls and a lack of understanding by management of the risks and controls responsibilities. Obviously, we as internal control professionals know that implementing sounding controls is vital to mitigate the risks and ultimately to ensure that companies thrive. We are also clear that we are facilitators of the risk management process and that the ultimate responsibility of managing company risks lies with the process owners and the control owners. But the challenge is to explain these concepts in a way that not only is understood by the business, but it also prompts them to take concrete actions toward managing such risks. So I'm curious to hear your take on this topic, as you have 30 plus years of experience in successfully delivering risk and controls projects for a wide variety of companies. How can internal control professionals effectively explain to process owners why controls are important?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. It reminds me of a day when I was sitting with the CEO of a company who said, "You always speak about risk. You never speak about successes. You never speak about things which go well." And that actually made me to understand that, we as control professionals, internal control professionals, we always think in risks and what could go wrong. But the flip side of risk is success, things which go well. And when I was, listening to that CEO, I thought, I think we better need to speak the language of the business, understand what the business is doing, where do they exist for? And once you know that, you can play around with what's happening in the business, what do you want to have assurance about what's happening, what's the information need you have. And by explaining that, you actually are already explaining why you do internal control. And then you can say to those process owners, this is why we do it for. This is what you want to have assurance about. And by the way, that's called internal control. So it's not using our own technobabble, speaking about internal control, risks, what could go wrong, what you want to mitigate, but listening to what the business language is and how you can translate that into your own domain and how to ensure and help the people understand what we want to achieve. And obviously, when you sit with people from finance, they're much more at the risk and control language as we are. But if you sit with sales guys, they'll say, risks, controls, I don't want to have those. But when you then start to talk with them and to understand, what do you want to achieve? How do you do that? What actions do you take? And if this now happens, or if that happens, or what do you then do? Then they're actually also more prone to understanding what they need to do, what they can do, what they cannot do, in order to assure that they have a quote unquote, answer an outcome of their process which they want to have, which, by the way, is internal control. So that helps.
Mm-hmm. Avoid using specific technical terminology to explain internal controls. That's surely something that has been a focus of our fellow professionals. But I think that what you are talking about is really the next step. It's not only about avoiding using the technical terminology, but really shifting the perspective. So really trying to see the reality from the eyes of somebody who has a very, very different background. Like you mentioned, for example, sales can be marketing, can be operations, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And once you are able to step in their shoes in understanding about what they do, and raising the right questions so that they get a feel for what you're looking for, so that they understand that you're not there to punish them, but there to help them to have checks and balances built into their system, but more like, what do you now do in order to achieve your sales goal? What steps do you perform? Where don't you feel at ease about? And what actions do you take in order to get more comfort, better knowledge, or whatever you need? Then you're much more able to work with them and help them, quote unquote, improve on internal control without using internal control language in order to get them there. And what worked out well with me was to use a number of examples which you then collect within the organization, and you use that example to explain, okay, if this now is working, and if this would happen, what would you then do? What steps, what actions would you take? And then you're actually using a concrete example to move them forward. And then at the end of the day, you can say, yeah, look, that what you do is what we control professionals would call internal control. So you're already practicing it. And it's not because I want to do that, I want you to do that. No, because you yourself want to do that.
So asking that scenario question, what would you do if this happens? And then make them understand we are talking basically risk and controls without calling them risk and controls.
Correct.
And can you share one example from your experience of effective communication on the importance of internal controls to the business, demonstrating what you just explained?
Describe a little bit the background. The company which I was helping was more family-owned, very informal, and they wanted to get more, quote-unquote, assurance about their reporting. And they were like, but how do we do that? So I used there just an example and asked, okay, if we were sitting together with the management team, if we are speaking about the purchase process, and I asked the CEO, what do you believe that your boundaries are? And he started to answer, he said, okay, that's this, and this. And I asked the CFO, what do you believe the boundaries are? And he gave another answer. I asked the marketing manager, and he gave an answer. And I asked the production manager, and he gave an answer. Then at the end of the day, when you were looking at all the different answers given, they were not the same, they were not equal, there were differences. I said, look, you don't speak, quote unquote, the same language. You're not on the same page and understanding about what needs to happen if you are going to purchase something. And if we, at the end of the day, want to report what we purchase in our books, if the front end is not working well, how in heaven's name can we have that properly recorded on our books? And if we want to streamline that, we get everybody on the same playing field, we get better understanding, we can better control it, and thereby we can better report it. Oh, so that got their attention, and then I needed to repeat on the various meetings in order to keep them on the same page, but also to drive what they called more bureaucracy in order to make it moving forward. But the bureaucracy helped them in understanding what was expected, what were the rules of the game when they were doing purchasing, and thereby increasing internal control for reporting. That tremendously helped them.
So your issue in the case was that there was different interpretations over what the process was, and actually nobody realized that until they were in the same room giving their opinion on the same process, and it turns out the opinion is different, and that's where everyone started to see that they have a problem, right?
Exactly.
I think that's very powerful. On the topic of being persuasive while explaining that the responsibility of risk and controls lies with management and not with internal control professionals, do you have any tips on how to be persuasive in explaining this to process owners and control owners?
The phrase which I quite often use is, don't do it because I ask you to do it. Because if you do it because I asked it, the first thing I know, when I walk away or when I start to do something different, it will just fall apart and nobody will do it again. So it won't help. But the second piece which comes together with it is, as a company, we all collectively work together. We all have our own goals, responsibilities, or our own objectives to do. And that collectively should help the company to reach its goal as a certain profit or a certain market share or attacking certain markets and so on. If we don't work together, if we don't take our own responsibility as production manager or a sales manager or as finance or CEO, then we won't get there. In order to make that all happening, there are some quote-unquote control structures which help us understand, are we on track, are we not on track, what's the information we need, how do we get there, and that's internal control. And that responsibility lies with every process owner, lies with every product owner, lies with every control owner in order to get there. Yeah, and honestly, if people don't buy into that concept that they are responsible for something, yeah, they should start to work for themselves and they should not be in a business, full stop.
That's a good point, yes.
If a company doesn't take risk, yeah, the company won't be in business that long. No risk, no business. So yeah, the two go hand in hand with each other. If they're not so much into quote unquote risk language, they see risk as something bad. You take a willful decision, something could go wrong, but you build your system in such a way that you have a timely notification if it tends to go too far so that you can take action. You want to control something, you want to understand what's happening and take action when it's necessary. So yeah, that's how it functions, and that's within everybody's responsibility. One of the things which I say quite often is, guys, I'm here to help you with identifying what the major areas are. I know a lot about control, risk, and how to help you thinking about it. But you, process owners, C-suite, you are the ones who are knowledgeable about your specific area of the organization. You have much more knowledge than I will ever gain. So speak out loud and start that discussion in understanding about what can happen, what could happen, or what you see happening in the outside world. And when that discussion starts, you get a collection of all those risks out there. And then you can fine-tune that, organize that, have discussions on the risk. Do we all understand it? What could go wrong? What could happen? What's the information need we have? Is this something which can happen very often or not? Do we need to plan for it? And so on and so forth. And you can also then decide, yeah, we know it exists. We see it as a risk, but we just accept that it will happen because, yeah, it's not, leave it to our organization, so just make it happen, and we will take care of it at the moment when it arises. But you can also have the situation where you say, if this is going to happen, we need to already be planned, prepared in order to be able to act very quickly because it could be very dangerous to us.
Mm-hmm. That's critical. And another key challenge highlighted by the survey I ran relates to finding win-win solutions when implementing controls. So in your experience, how can internal control professionals find pragmatic solutions which mitigate risks to a sufficient degree and are at the same time feasible for the business? What can we do to find better win-win solutions?
Yeah, one of the advices which I would give is look at other organizations and speak with other risk professionals to get more and more examples of what could work in an organization. Getting out of textbook examples how you can mitigate risk which exists in an organization, or mitigate certain areas where risk exists in an organization. And especially when you build up experience about what's happening in an organization, when you understand what the context is, the people working with the systems, you'll be able to come up with certain solutions which can work. But you need to work together as well with the process owner, or together with the control owner, to understand, will this now work in the given context of the organization? Will it mitigate the risk or what could go wrong in this area? And if not, what could we do differently? That also means that as a risk professional, you need to be pragmatic and flexible in understanding how can we now solve this, and what could work or what cannot work. So I've worked, for instance, with a production manager, and he was producing seed. And seed is a product from nature, so a lot can happen, a lot of things can go wrong, which are quote unquote out of your control because it's nature. So it could be too dry, it could be too wet. What do you now do about it? How do you now manage that? He said, yeah, the pieces which I do is where the seed is growing, I can't do that much. I can maybe do watering if it's too dry, but if it's too wet, I can maybe do some irrigation, but it's limited. And as soon as I say it, and as long as the crop is growing, it just moves on. But when it comes close to harvest, I keep an eye on the weather forecast, what the stand of the crop is, in order to take the decision to harvest, yes or no. So that's my risk management strategy. And you're like, okay, that works. But what it actually means is sit together with the process owner to understand what controls, i.e. what measures the control owner would take or the process owner would take, and then think about, okay, if I hear that, will that compensate, will that mitigate the risk which is out there? That will, that 9 out of 10 times in my experience will help. And obviously, there are those black and white situations where you see a long list of risks and the process owner is looking and saying, yeah, no, there's no control necessary because it will work. And they say, hold on, you need to do something because the impact of not doing anything is too big. And you can also have the other side where it's so tightly controlled. Yeah, we're spending so much time on it. Yeah, we could better do something else because the risk happening is so low. Don't do that.
Yeah, I think the point you made earlier on, talk with your colleagues and also with the fellow internal control professionals is so important. I found that massively useful to consider options that I didn't even know that were available. For example, new softwares, new ways of setting certain software in certain ways that would prevent access problem, permission problem. I remember I had a few conversations with colleagues that did specific projects and find the same difficulties in finding a good solution for the business, and they overcome the problem by implementing specific actions, and I put that together and brought it to my client to suggest a variety of options for them and to see which were working better, like a bit more manual, a bit more automated. Some would not require any investment, some would require some investment in new technology. So I think also give the chance to pick from a range of solutions also helps sometimes, and definitely being updated on what's new on the market in terms of accounting softwares, operational softwares, and obviously more audit tools also is very helpful.
Oh, absolutely agree. And what also helps is 9 out of 10 times there are networking groups or networking sessions where you can share ideas or you can listen to others. That's also tremendously helpful to learn other solutions, other difficulties which people face, and like the discussion which we are having, if people listen to it, they get new ideas or they get new thoughts, or they think, oh, if it worked in this way or if it worked in that way, maybe I could tweak it a bit into this direction and it will help me as well. So yeah, there's not a one answer to one difficulty. There's not one solution to one risk. There are quite often more solutions available or more possibilities available to make something happen.
Mm-hmm. I see that clients really appreciate, clients can be also obviously employers or colleagues, anyone really appreciate the possibility to choose between different solutions, to be presented with different solutions for two reasons. First, obviously allows them to pick the one that they think is best suited for their own specific needs, the type of company and processes. And the second is because also it demonstrates the fact that you as internal control professional really went the extra mile to trying to find a winning solution for them that works for them. As you said earlier, it's important that controls are carried on because they make sense and not just because the consultant or the internal control professional ask you to do that. So it also ensures that really finding a winning solution. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think that was extremely useful, and thank you for being with us today. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoy it, make sure you like it and share it. If you want even more resources on how to be extra effective as internal controls professionals, check out our website, www.internalcontroltoolbox.com, and subscribe to the email list. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.